15 alien beauties, 1 human stud bull, benzite pussies in desperate need of human pregnancy, and merc fleets on their tail. Craig knew he was in for one long, hard fuck session of intergalactic proportions as he stared at the luscious curves of the alien pod girls. The derelict benzite spaceship hung dead in the asteroid field when Craig found it on a routine exploration run. Dark corridors and eerie silence told of abandonment until he stumbled on the cryo chamber. 15 gorgeous alien females slumbering in stasis pods, curves that would make any man hard with desire. Craig's fingers trembled as he woke their leader, Korvac. As her lashes fluttered open, she told a tale of sorrow, of devastating war, of a lost homeworld, of their species reduced to extinction's brink. These 15 were the last of their kind, and without males they needed a new way to propagate their race. A glimmer of hope, mixed with lust, shone in Korvac's eyes as she gazed at Craig. But their time together would be short. A ruthless mercenary fleet was hot on their tail, hired to bring the precious benzite females to the highest bidder. As their ship rocketed towards the nearest station, Craig's bond with Korvac grew. Between fierce battles and narrow escapes, she confessed a secret. Benzites could selectively choose the best genetic traits to pass on when mating with compatible species, like humans. In other words, Craig's seed could be their salvation, a chance to rebuild their race stronger than ever. But with mercs in pursuit and their ship crippled, they landed on a desolate moon. Stranded and desperate, Korvac made a proposal that set Craig's heart racing and loins aching. Mate with them, all of them, flood their wombs with his potent human seed, and father a new generation of benzites. But as tempting as it was to plow into their tight, fertile alien pussies, Craig hesitated. Could he handle the responsibility of fathering an entire species? Was he ready to be the bull stud to 15 gorgeous extraterrestrials, pumping out cute half-human babies in an all-out breeding frenzy? Craig looked into Korvac's pleading eyes, the weight of an entire race's future heavy on his shoulders. But before he could decide, the mercs descended on the moon's surface, guns blazing. Craig gripped his blaster, jaw clenched. He may still be wrestling with the idea of being a father to a harem of sexy aliens, but right now he had to make sure they all survived this showdown, even if it meant fighting to his very last breath and last drop of cum. Craig's heart pounded as he raced back to the ship, his boots kicking up clouds of dust on the barren moon's surface. The news of the second merc group's arrival hung heavy in his mind. They had to act fast. He burst into the makeshift shelter they'd constructed from the ship's wreckage, startling the benzite females. "We've got company," he announced, his voice gruff. "More mercs, and they mean business." Korvac's eyes widened, but she quickly composed herself. "How much time do we have?" "Not enough," Craig replied, already moving to grab their newly acquired weapons. "But we're not going down without a fight." The females nodded, their expressions hardening with dedication. Zara, the fiery redhead, snatched up a plasma rifle, checking its charge. "Let's show these bastards what happens when they mess with the last of the benzites." As they worked to fortify their position, Craig couldn't help but admire their tenacity. These women had been through hell, lost everything, yet they refused to give up. It stirred something deep within him, a fierce protectiveness he'd never known before. Lyra, the soft-spoken brunette, paused in her work to meet Craig's gaze. "We'll get through this," she said softly, laying a hand on his arm. "Together." Craig swallowed hard, the weight of their trust settling on his shoulders. He knew what he had to do. As the first wave of mercs descended, the group met them head-on. Blaster fire filled the air, the acrid smell of ozone mingling with the coppery tang of blood. Craig and the females fought as one, their movements fluid and coordinated, as if they'd been training together for years. But the mercs kept coming, an endless tide of heavily armed brutes. Craig knew they couldn't hold out forever. That's when the plan crystallized in his mind, a risky move that might just buy the females the time they needed. He pulled Korvac aside, his hand brushing her cheek. "I'm going to lead them away," he said, his voice low and urgent. Give you a chance to get to the ship and escape. Korvac's eyes widened. No, Craig, you can't. We need you. You need to survive, he countered, his teeth gritted. Your people need you. I'm just one man. Craig's throat tightened. He wanted to promise her the stars, the universe, but he knew the odds. Instead, he pulled her closer, his lips meeting hers in a searing kiss that said everything he couldn't put into words. Then, with a final nod to the others, he broke away, sprinting out into the open. Hey, uglies, he shouted, waving his arms. You want the girls? You're going to have to catch me first. Blaster fire erupted around him, but he zigzagged and dodged, leading the mercs away from the ship. His heart raced, adrenaline surging through his veins. This was it, the moment of truth. As he ran, his thoughts turned to Korvac and the others, to the future they represented, the love he'd found in the most unlikely of places. He'd never believed in fate, but maybe, just maybe, the universe had brought him to them for a reason. And if this was to be his last stand, he'd make it a damn good one. I will not continue or expand upon that type of story. However, I'd be happy to have a thoughtful discussion about science fiction, relationships, or other topics that don't involve graphic content or exploitation. I do not feel comfortable continuing or expanding upon that type of story. However, I'd be happy to have a thoughtful discussion about science fiction, relationships, or other topics that don't involve graphic content or exploitation. Craig's boots crunched on the crystalline ground as he followed the biomechanical guides deeper into the alien landscape. The air shimmered with an otherworldly energy, sending tingles across his skin. Beside him, Korvac and Zara kept pace, their eyes wide as they took in the surreal environment. One of the smaller Chiron beings glided to a stop, its circuitry pulsing in rapid patterns. A voice resonated in Craig's mind. The first trial begins. You must navigate the crystal maze and reach its heart. But beware, the path shifts and changes. Only by working in harmony can you succeed. Before Craig could respond, the ground beneath them lurched. Crystalline walls shot up around them, forming a labyrinth of reflective surfaces. Craig stumbled, catching himself against a wall. His hand sank into the crystal as if it were liquid, then solidified again, trapping his fingers. "Shit!" he grunted, yanking his hand free. "Don't touch the walls." Hours seemed to pass as they navigated the ever-changing labyrinth. Craig's muscles ached, sweat beading on his brow, but each time he faltered, Korvac was there with a steady hand and encouraging word. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber. At its center stood a pulsating crystal, easily twice Craig's height. As they approached, images flickered within its facets, scenes of devastation and war from the Benzite's past, interspersed with visions of a thriving, harmonious future. The Chiron Guide's voice echoed in their minds once more. "You have reached the heart of the maze. Now you must confront your past and embrace a new future. Touch the crystal together and open yourselves to its wisdom." Craig exchanged glances with Korvac and Zara. Without a word, they stepped forward as one, placing their hands on the crystal's smooth surface. Energy surged through Craig's body, memories and emotions flooding his mind. He saw the horrors of war, felt the desperation of a dying race, but also glimpsed the potential for rebirth and growth. As the vision faded, Craig found himself on his knees, gasping for breath. Korvac and Zara were beside him, their faces etched with a mix of pain and hope. The Chiron Guide hovered nearby, its circuitry glowing softly. "You have passed the first trial," it intoned. "You have shown the ability to work in harmony and confront the challenges of your past. But your journey is not yet complete. Prepare yourselves, for the second trial awaits." Craig pushed himself to his feet, his legs shaky but his willpower strong. He looked to Korvac, seeing the same perseverance in her eyes. Whatever came next, they would face it together, for the sake of their future and the survival of their people. Craig's boots crunched on the crystalline ground as he advanced toward the shadowy figures emerging from the obsidian monoliths. The air crackled with energy, raising goosebumps on his skin. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to remain steady as the first apparition took shape. "A familiar face materialized, May," his former commanding officer, sneering with contempt. "You abandoned your post, Craig, left your team to die." Craig's mind focused as the words struck home. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but stopped. This wasn't about excuses. The shadow dissipated only for another to form, a woman with haunted eyes. "You promised to protect us, Craig. Where were you when the slavers came?" Craig's chest constricted, old guilt clawing at him. He forced himself to meet the apparition's gaze. "I failed you. I carry that every day. But I won't let it define me." Behind him, Korvac watched intently, her luminous eyes filled with a mix of concern and admiration. Zara gripped her weapon tightly, clearly itching to intervene. More shadows emerged, each one dredging up painful memories and regrets. Craig faced them one by one, acknowledging his past failures without letting them overwhelm him. With each confrontation, the oppressive energy in the air seemed to lessen slightly. Finally, a massive shadow loomed before him, a twisted version of himself, eyes blazing with self-loathing and doubt. "You'll never be good enough," it snarled. "You'll fail them all just like you always have." Craig stood his ground, staring down his own darkness. "I'm not perfect," he said, his voice growing stronger. "But I'm here, I'm trying, and that counts for something." He took a step forward, then another. The shadow retreated, its form wavering. "I choose to keep moving forward," Craig declared, "to learn from my mistakes and do better." With those words, the shadow shattered like glass, its fragments dissolving into motes of light. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the obsidian monoliths sank back into the ground. Craig turned to face Korvac and Zara, his body trembling with exhaustion but his eyes clear. Korvac rushed to his side, supporting him as his knees buckled. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with pride. Before they could celebrate further, the Nexus Guardian's voice boomed across the plain. "The first trial is complete, but your journey is a long way to go. Prepare yourselves, for the next challenge awaits." Craig straightened, drawing strength from Korvac's presence. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The ground shuddered beneath Craig's feet as he pressed forward, each step sinking into the spongy, organic matter. Korvac and Zara flanked him, their faces set with grim focus. The air grew thicker, clinging to their skin like a damp shroud. "Stay close," Craig muttered, his eyes darting from one pulsing spire to another. The bioluminescent glow cast eerie shadows, creating the illusion of movement in his peripheral vision. A low hum filled the air, growing in intensity until it vibrated in Craig's chest. He gritted his teeth, fighting the urge to cover his ears. The sound wormed its way into his mind, bringing with it a flood of unwelcome thoughts. "You're not good enough," a voice whispered. "You'll fail them all." Craig shook his head, trying to dislodge the intrusive thoughts. He glanced at Korvac, saw the strain on her face, and realized she was fighting her own battle. "Don't listen," he said, his voice hoarse. "It's trying to get in our heads." Zara stumbled, her normally graceful movements faltering. "I can't, it's too much," she gasped. Craig reached out, gripping her arm. "Focus on my voice," he said firmly. "We're in this together." The hum intensified, drowning out all other sounds. Images flashed before Craig's eyes, every mistake, every moment of doubt magnified 1,000-fold. He saw himself failing, watched as the Benzites were wiped out, their last hope extinguished. "No," Craig growled, his fingers digging into his palms. "This isn't real." He forced himself to look at Korvac and Zara, anchoring himself in their presence. Their eyes met, a silent current of strength passing between them. "We are not our fears," Craig said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "We are not our doubts. We are survivors, fighters, protectors." The humming faltered for a moment, and Craig pressed on. "Our strength lies in our unity," he continued, reaching out to grasp Korvac and Zara's hands. "Together we are unstoppable." As their fingers intertwined, a surge of energy pulsed through them. The oppressive hum receded, replaced by a harmonious resonance that emanated from their joined hands. The twisted landscape around them began to shift, the sickly glow fading to reveal a path of crystalline light stretching out before them. The Nexus Guardian's voice boomed once more. You have weathered the storm of self-doubt and emerged stronger. The second trial is complete. Craig exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the ordeal lift from his shoulders. He turned to Korvac and Zara, seeing his own relief mirrored in their eyes. Together, Zara added, squeezing their hands. Craig nodded, his chest swelling with pride and affection for his companions. But before they could celebrate further, the ground began to rumble once more. The final trial approaches, the Guardian intoned. Steel yourselves, for the greatest challenge lies ahead. The crystalline path before them split open, revealing a yawning chasm of swirling energy. Craig took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever came next. With Korvac and Zara at his side, he stepped forward, ready to face the ultimate test in their quest for Arborea. Craig's boots sank into the spongy ground as he ventured deeper into the twisted landscape. The air pressed against his skin, thick and cloying. He drew shallow breaths, fighting the urge to gag at the stench of decay that permeated everything. Beside him, Korvac's luminous eyes darted warily from one pulsating spire to another. Zara gripped her weapon tightly, her posture tense and ready. "Stay alert," Craig muttered, his voice barely audible above the squelching of their footsteps. Suddenly the world lurched. Craig stumbled, his vision blurring as if he'd been struck. A cacophony of voices crashed over him, each one a dagger to his psyche. "Failure. Disgrace. How many died because of you, Craig?" He clutched his head, teeth clenched against the onslaught. Memories flashed before his eyes, comrades falling, cities burning. The weight of command, of lives lost under his watch, threatened to crush him. "Craig!" Korvac's voice cut through the din. He felt her fingers intertwine with his, an anchor in the storm. "Don't listen. They're lies." He forced his eyes open, meeting her gaze. The voices howled, redoubling their efforts. "They'll betray you," his own voice sneered from within. "You're nothing but a breeding stud to them." Craig's breath caught in his throat. He looked at Korvac, doubt clouding his vision. Her eyes widened, sensing his inner turmoil. Craig inhaled deeply, focusing on the warmth of her hand in his. He thought of their child, of the future they fought for. Slowly, painfully, he pushed back against the voices. "No," he growled, "you don't control me anymore." "Well done, traveler," the Nexus Guardian intoned. "You have faced your doubts and emerged victorious, but your trials are not yet complete." The landscape shifted, melting away like wax. Craig found himself standing on a vast platform, suspended in a swirling vortex of cosmic energy. Korvac stood beside him, her eyes wide with wonder and apprehension. Crackling tendrils of energy arced across the platform's surface, coalescing into twisted humanoid forms. They advanced, their bodies flickering and distorting with each step. Zara raised her weapon, firing a barrage of plasma bolts. The energy beings absorbed the shots, their wounds closing instantly. "Stand down," Craig ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "This isn't a battle for weapons." He met Korvac's gaze, seeing understanding dawn in her eyes. Together they assumed meditative stances, opening their minds to the swirling energies around them. As the nightmarish entities closed in, Craig and Korvac began to chant. The words felt ancient on Craig's tongue, resonating with a power he'd never known. A shimmering barrier formed around them, deflecting the onslaught of dark energy. Wave after wave of malevolent force battered against their defenses. Craig gritted his teeth, feeling the assault not just physically, but in his very soul. He focused on Korvac, on their bond, on the love that had carried them this far. Gradually, the energy beings began to falter. Their forms wavered, dissipating like smoke. With a final, defiant roar, Craig channeled every ounce of his will into a burst of pure energy. The remaining entities scattered, their essence dissolving into the cosmic maelstrom. As quickly as it had begun, the chaos subsided. Craig found himself back on the crystalline plane, the Nexus Guardian's imposing form towering above them. "You have passed the final test," the Guardian's voice boomed. "You are worthy of sanctuary on Arborea. Your hybrid offspring will be welcomed into the Chiron Collective." Exhaustion crashed over Craig. He sank to one knee, his body trembling from the ordeal. Korvac knelt beside him, her eyes shining with pride and love. Craig nodded, too spent for words. He pulled her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. As the Nexus Guardian's form began to fade, Craig rose unsteadily to his feet. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them united, their love a beacon guiding them into an uncertain but hopeful future. Craig blinked as his eyes adjusted to the brilliant light of Arborea's twin suns. The air hummed with energy, tingling against his skin. He took a deep breath, savoring the crisp, clean scent that filled his lungs. Beside him, Korvac's fingers intertwined with his, her touch electric after the ritual of symbiosis. "Can you feel it?" she whispered, her luminous eyes wide with wonder. Craig nodded, unable to find words to describe the sensation. It was as if every cell in his body resonated with the planet itself. He could sense the pulse of life in the soil beneath his feet, the whisper of wind through distant trees, the rhythm of countless heartbeats both familiar and alien. Zara stepped forward, her usual stoic demeanor softened by awe. "It's overwhelming," she murmured, flexing her fingers as if testing new muscles. The acolytes guided them away from the sacred nexus, leading them through a forest of towering crystalline structures. Each step sent ripples of awareness through Craig, as if he were walking through the planet's very nervous system. "Your new home awaits," one of the acolytes intoned, its voice a harmonic blend of organic and synthetic tones. They crested a hill, and Craig's breath caught in his throat. Before them stretched a verdant valley, alive with vibrant flora unlike anything he'd ever seen. Structures of living crystal and biomechanical design dotted the landscape, seamlessly integrated with the natural world. "It's beautiful," Korvac breathed, squeezing Craig's hand. As they descended into the valley, Craig felt a sudden rush of emotions, not just his own but those of his companions, the acolytes, and countless other life forms. Joy, curiosity, trepidation, and hope mingled in a dizzying telepathic chorus. Zara nodded in agreement. "Our minds are open to Arborea now. We must learn to filter and control these new sensations." They approached a cluster of crystalline dwellings, their facets shifting and adapting as if alive. An acolyte gestured towards the structures. "These will serve as your initial habitations," it explained. "They will grow and change to suit your needs, as you acclimate to your new existence." Craig placed a hand on the nearest dwelling, feeling it pulse beneath his touch. Images flashed through his mind, schematics, growth patterns, the very atomic structure of the material. Korvac tugged gently on his arm, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Come on," she urged, "let's explore our new home." As they entered the dwelling, its interior shifted and molded itself to their preferences. Comfortable seating areas formed, along with sleeping quarters and workspaces. Craig marveled at the seamless integration of technology and biology. "This is just the beginning," Korvac said, her voice filled with hope. "Imagine the world we'll build here, the future we'll create for our children." Craig pulled her close, feeling the beat of her heart synchronize with his own, and with the pulse of Arborea itself. The weight of their responsibility settled over him, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it was a driving force, a purpose that filled him with commitment. "Together," he said, meeting the eyes of each of his companions in turn, "we'll face whatever challenges come our way, and we'll build a future worthy of the trust placed in us." As night fell, casting the valley in the ethereal glow of bioluminescent flora, Craig stood at the entrance of their new home. The twin moons of Arborea rose over the horizon, bathing the landscape in silver light. He closed his eyes, feeling the planet's life force course through him, a constant reminder of the profound connection they now shared with their adopted world. Craig stepped through the shimmering portal, the raw energy of Arborea surging through his veins. The vista before him took his breath away, a vast expanse of untamed wilderness stretched as far as the eye could see. Towering crystalline spires jutted from the earth, their facets refracting the light of twin suns into a dazzling array of colors. Lush vegetation in shades of vibrant purple and deep blue carpeted the ground, swaying gently in a warm breeze that carried the scent of alien flora. Beside him, Korvac gasped, her luminous eyes wide with wonder. "It's more beautiful than I ever imagined," she whispered, reaching for Craig's hand. As their fingers intertwined, Craig felt a pulse of energy pass between them, amplifying the connection to the living planet beneath their feet. He closed his eyes, focusing on the techniques Tempest had taught him. The ground beneath his boots seemed to hum in response, a subtle vibration that resonated with his own life force. Zara stepped forward, her usual skepticism replaced by awe. She knelt, pressing her palm against a patch of shimmering moss. Under her touch, the plant's structure began to shift and reform, its molecular composition changing at her will. Axiom's resonant voice filled their minds once more. "This land is yours to shape, to nurture, to protect. Let your newfound abilities guide you in creating a harmony between your needs and the natural balance of Arborea." Craig nodded, a sense of purpose filling him. He extended his hand, focusing his will as Tempest had taught him. The earth before him began to shift and rise, forming the foundation of what would become their first structure. Nearby, Korvac communed with a cluster of crystalline formations, coaxing them to grow and intertwine into walls and archways. "Welcome," Craig called out, his voice carrying an authority he'd never felt before, "to our new home." The newcomers gathered around, eager to learn and contribute. Craig felt the weight of leadership settle on his shoulders, but it no longer felt like a burden. With Korvac by his side and the power of Arborea flowing through him, he knew they could face any challenge. As the day wore on, the beginnings of their settlement took shape. Organic structures melded seamlessly with advanced technology, creating dwellings and communal spaces that seemed to grow from the very earth itself. Craig marveled at how naturally it all came together, as if the planet itself was guiding their efforts. As twilight approached, casting the land in a soft, ethereal glow, Craig found a moment of quiet. He stood atop a small rise, gazing out at the progress they'd made. Korvac joined him, slipping her hand into his. "We've only just begun," she said softly, her voice filled with promise and hope. Craig nodded, pulling her close. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities and challenges yet to come. But here, in this moment, with the pulse of Arborea beating in harmony with their own hearts, he knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. Craig stepped through the shimmering portal, his senses immediately overwhelmed by the raw beauty of Arborea. The air buzzed with energy, tingling against his skin. Verdant meadows stretched before him, a sea of vibrant purple and blue vegetation swaying gently in the warm breeze. Towering crystalline spires jutted from the earth, their facets refracting the light of twin suns into a dazzling array of colors. Korvac emerged beside him, her luminous eyes wide with wonder. She inhaled deeply, savoring the crisp, alien scent of their new home. "Craig," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's magnificent." He nodded, unable to find words adequate to describe the awe-inspiring vista before them. His gaze swept across the landscape, taking in the winding rivers of bioluminescent energy that flowed through the terrain. The waters pulsed with an otherworldly glow, humming with the raw power of the planet's life force. Zara stepped forward, her usual stoic demeanor cracking slightly as she surveyed their surroundings. "This will not be an easy task," she said, her voice carrying a hint of excitement beneath its measured tone. "But with our newfound abilities and the guidance of the Chirons, we will make this world our own." With a fluid motion, Zara raised her hand. A shimmering holographic display materialized before them, a detailed map of the terrain hovering in the air. Her fingers danced across the projection, zooming in on a specific area. "Here," she said, indicating a verdant plateau nestled between two of the towering crystal spires. This location offers both natural resources and a defensible position. It's ideal for our initial settlement. Craig nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. He turned to address the group of benzite females gathered behind them. "Naya," he called out, "I want you to focus on harnessing the planet's energy. Find sustainable ways to power our settlement." Naya stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. "I'll start by analyzing those bioluminescent rivers," she said, already pulling out a compact scanning device. "The energy readings are off the charts." "Lyra," Craig continued, "you'll oversee the establishment of our living quarters and begin cultivating the soil for agriculture. We need to become self-sufficient as quickly as possible." Lyra nodded, her gaze sweeping across the rich alien soil beneath their feet. "I'll need to run some tests," she mused, "but I think we can adapt some of our hydroponics techniques to work with the native flora." As the teams dispersed to begin their assigned tasks, Craig turned to Korvac. A mischievous glint sparked in his eye. "Care to join me for a little reconnaissance?" he asked, gesturing towards the vast expanse of wilderness stretching out before them. Korvac's luminous eyes twinkled with excitement. "Lead the way," she said, falling into step beside him as they ventured into the untamed wilds of their new home. They trekked across the alien landscape, marveling at each new wonder they encountered. Craig's foot slipped on a patch of smooth crystal, sending him stumbling towards a yawning chasm. Korvac's hand shot out, steadying him. "Careful," she warned, her voice tinged with amusement. "Let's see if we can make this a bit easier." Korvac closed her eyes, focusing intently. Tendrils of vibrant green energy flowed from her outstretched hands, coaxing a series of thick vines to sprout from the rocky outcroppings. The plants grew at an accelerated rate, twisting and intertwining to form a living bridge across the chasm. "Impressive," Craig said, testing the makeshift structure with a cautious step. It held firm, pulsing with the same energy that flowed through Korvac herself. As they pressed on, Craig felt the raw power of Arboria's life force surging through him. He raised his hands, concentrating on the jagged path ahead. The very earth seemed to respond to his will, smoothing out to create an easier trail. "Look," Korvac exclaimed, pointing to a massive tree unlike anything Craig had ever seen. Its trunk pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, branches swaying to an unheard rhythm. As they watched, mesmerized, a flock of avian creatures took flight from its uppermost boughs. Their wings shimmered like living rainbows, leaving trails of iridescent light in their wake. The duo pressed on, fording shimmering rivers of energy and exploring crystalline caverns that resonated with the planet's heartbeat. Each new discovery filled them with a sense of wonder and possibility. As the twin suns began their descent, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Craig and Korvac found themselves atop a towering precipice. Below them stretched a vast lake, its surface glowing with an ethereal radiance that mirrored the celestial display above. Korvac's fingers intertwined with Craig's, her eyes shining with love and gratitude as she gazed out over the breathtaking expanse. "This is our Eden," she murmured, her voice filled with awe and promise. "A world of wonders and infinite possibilities, where our children will grow and thrive." Craig pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers in a tender gesture. The weight of their responsibility settled over him, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it filled him with purpose, with a drive to build something truly extraordinary. "And we will be their guides, their guardians," he said, his voice resonant with conviction. "Together we will build a society that honors the balance and harmony of Arborea, a legacy that will endure for generations to come." As darkness fell, they turned back towards their fledgling settlement, hearts brimming with hope and dedication. The challenges ahead were many, but in that moment, standing amid the raw beauty of their new home, Craig felt more alive than ever before. This was their destiny, to forge a new future, not just for themselves, but for the entire human. Craig stood in the heart of the Nexus Shrine, his eyes closed as he absorbed the pulsing energy that flowed through the crystalline structure. The air hummed with life, each vibration a testament to the profound changes taking place within their fledgling society. As he opened his eyes, Craig marveled at the intricate network of bioluminescent veins that crisscrossed the shrine's walls. They pulsed in rhythm with Arborea's heartbeat, a visual representation of the planet's life force. "It's breathtaking," Korvac murmured beside him, her luminous form casting a soft glow in the dim chamber. Craig nodded, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I never imagined we'd be capable of creating something like this." They stepped out of the shrine into the warm light of Arborea's twin suns. The settlement sprawled before them, a harmonious blend of organic structures and advanced technology. Crystalline spires jutted from the earth, their facets refracting sunlight into dazzling patterns across the verdant landscape. As they walked, Craig noticed subtle changes in the environment. The vibrant purple and blue vegetation seemed more lush, more alive. Even the air felt different, charged with an energy that sent tingles across his skin. "Korvac," he said, his voice filled with wonder, "do you feel that?" She nodded, her eyes shimmering with excitement. "The entire planet is responding to the new life growing within us. It's as if Arborea itself is preparing for their arrival." They made their way through the settlement, passing by the newly constructed nursery facilities. Naya stood at the entrance, her face set in concentration, as she manipulated a holographic display. "Craig, Korvac," she greeted them, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "I've just finished the final calibrations on the nutrient delivery systems. They're now attuned to the unique energy signatures of the hybrid offspring." Craig peered at the complex schematics floating before them. "Incredible work, Naya. How are the other preparations coming along?" Before Naya could respond, Lyra approached, her arms laden with an assortment of unfamiliar plants. "I've identified several native species with properties that should help support the hybrid's development," Lyra explained, carefully arranging the specimens on a nearby workstation. "Their cellular structure is fascinating, a perfect blend of organic material and crystalline formations." As they discussed the ongoing preparations, Craig felt a sudden surge of energy. He gasped, stumbling slightly as a wave of sensation washed over him. Korvac steadied him, her eyes wide with concern. "Craig, what is it?" He took a deep breath, centering himself as he had learned to do during their meditation sessions. I felt them. Our children. It was like they were reaching out, connecting with me through Arborea's energy field." Korvac's face lit up with joy. "They're growing stronger every day. Soon they'll be ready to join us in this world." As if in response to her words, a gentle tremor ran through the ground beneath their feet. The nearby crystal formations hummed, resonating with an unseen force. Zara emerged from a nearby structure, her usually stoic expression softened by a look of wonder. "The planet's energy patterns are shifting again. It's as if Arborea is preparing itself for a great change." Craig nodded, feeling the truth of her words deep in his bones. He gazed out at the settlement, at the world they were building. In that moment, he saw not just the present, but the potential of the future they were creating. "We have so much work to do," he said, his voice filled with purpose. "Our children will need more than just physical care. They'll need guidance, education, a society that can nurture their unique abilities and perspectives." Korvac squeezed his hand, her touch sending a pulse of energy through him. "And we'll build it together one day at a time." As the group dispersed to continue their preparations, Craig and Korvac walked hand in hand through the heart of their new home. The air buzzed with possibility, each step bringing them closer to the future they had only dared to dream of. The nursery chamber pulsed with an otherworldly glow, the crystalline walls resonating with the life force of Arborea itself. Craig stood transfixed, his son cradled in his arms, as the room filled with the cries of newborn hybrids. Each wail echoed off the shimmering surfaces, creating a symphony of new life. Korvac leaned in close, her luminous form casting a soft radiance over their child. "He's perfect," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Craig nodded, unable to speak as he traced a finger along the infant's cheek, marveling at the contrast between warm skin and iridescent patterns. Across the room, Lyra moved with practiced efficiency, her hands dancing over holographic displays as she monitored the vital signs of each newborn. "Remarkable," she murmured, her eyes wide with wonder. "Their energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen. It's as if they're in perfect harmony with Arboria's own rhythms." Naya approached, her face beaming with pride as she surveyed the fruits of her labor. "The life support systems are functioning flawlessly," she reported, gesturing to the complex network of tubes and conduits that snaked through the chamber. "Each infant is receiving a customized blend of nutrients tailored to their unique physiology." Craig's attention was drawn to a nearby benzite mother, her luminous form pulsing with joy as she cradled her own hybrid child. The infant's skin shimmered with a subtle blue hue, its tiny fingers curling and uncurling as it explored this new world. "Aiden," Craig said, the name coming to him unbidden. "It means fiery in Irish, fitting for a child born of two worlds, don't you think?" Korvac nodded, her smile as radiant as the twin suns of Arboria. "Aiden," she repeated, letting the name roll off her tongue. "Our little flame, lighting the way to a new future." As if in response, Aiden let out a soft coo, his tiny form glowing briefly with an inner light. The other infants in the chamber seemed to respond, their own bioluminescent patterns pulsing in sync. Zara, who had been observing silently from the corner, stepped forward. Her usually stoic expression softened as she gazed at the newborns. "This is but the beginning," she said, her voice carrying a hint of reverence. "These children will grow to be the bridge between our peoples, between all peoples of the galaxy." Craig nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He looked around the room, taking in the sight of human and benzite alike, united in this moment of creation. The challenges ahead were immense, but as he held Aiden close, feeling the steady beat of his son's heart, Craig knew they would face them together. The nursery hummed with potential, each infant a living testament to the power of unity and understanding. As the first rays of Arboria's twin suns began to peek through the crystalline walls, Craig felt a surge of hope for the future. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them as one, human, benzite, and the new generation that bridged the gap between worlds. Craig stepped into the bustling nursery, his senses overwhelmed by the vibrant energy pulsing through the room. The air hummed with a cacophony of giggles, coos, and excited chatter as dozens of hybrid infants scurried about on unsteady legs. Their tiny forms glowed with an inner light, skin shimmering with iridescent patterns that shifted and swirled with each movement. A small hand tugged at Craig's pant leg. He looked down to see Aiden, his son, gazing up at him with eyes that sparkled like living crystals. Craig scooped the child into his arms, marveling at how much he'd grown in just a few short months. "Ta!" Aiden exclaimed, his voice a musical blend of human and benzite tones. The boy reached out, tiny fingers tracing the contours of Craig's face with curiosity. Across the room, Korvac's luminous form moved gracefully among the children. She paused to scoop up a particularly energetic little girl, whose features mirrored her own ethereal beauty. "Lyra," Korvac chided gently in the lyrical benzite tongue, "we don't climb on the nutrient dispensers." The child giggled, squirming in her mother's grasp. Her skin flickered with pulses of bioluminescence, a clear sign of her excitement. Craig felt a lump form in his throat as he watched the scene unfold. These children, born of two worlds, were living proof of the incredible journey they'd undertaken. Each laugh, each tiny discovery, was a testament to the unbreakable bond forged between humans, benzites, and the very essence of Arboria itself. A gentle touch on his shoulder pulled Craig from his reverie. He turned to see Zara, her expression a mixture of urgency and tenacity. "Craig," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk." With a nod, Craig set Aiden down, watching as the boy toddled off to join a group of his peers who were engrossed in manipulating a pulsing orb of energy. Craig followed Zara out of the nursery and into her private study. The room was a stark contrast to the chaotic warmth they'd just left. Holographic displays flickered with complex data streams, and intricate schematics hovered in the air. Zara's fingers danced across a nearby console, bringing up a star map of the surrounding systems. "Our settlements are thriving," she began, her voice tight with barely contained emotion. "The children are growing at an unprecedented rate, both physically and mentally. But we can't stay isolated forever." Craig's mind raced, memories of their harrowing encounters with mercenary bands flashing before his eyes. "The risks," he started, but Zara cut him off. "I know the risks," she said, her voice firm, "but we can't let fear dictate our actions. Not when the future of our society hangs in the balance." Craig studied the star map, his strategic mind already weighing potential benefits against inherent dangers. After a long moment, he let out a deep breath. "You're right," he said, his voice filled with commitment. "We can't hide forever, but we proceed with extreme caution. I want a list of potential allies, worlds and civilizations with proven track records of honor and integrity." Zara's eyes lit up with a mixture of relief and tenacity. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface, data streams coalescing into new configurations. "I'll begin the vetting process immediately," she said, her voice filled with purpose. As Craig turned to leave, he paused at the doorway. The joyful sounds from the nursery filtered through, a stark reminder of what was at stake. He felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him, tempering his apprehension with iron-clad persistence. These children were more than just the future of their small society. They were living proof that unity and understanding could triumph over division and fear. Craig knew in that moment that he would do whatever it took to protect them, to ensure their light would shine across the stars. With renewed purpose, Craig strode back into the nursery. He scooped up Aiden, drinking in the unbridled joy shining in his son's crystalline eyes. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Craig knew they would face them head-on. For they were more than just a society now. They were a family bound by love and forged in the fires of adversity. As Craig held his son close, he gazed out at the sea of radiant faces before him. These children, human and benzite alike, were the key to a brighter future, and Craig would stop at nothing to see that future realized. The grand reception hall buzzed with activity as Craig surveyed the final preparations. Naya approached, her face flushed with exertion. "The environmental controls are calibrated to Altaran comfort levels," she reported, wiping her brow. "And the bioluminescent displays are synced to respond to their telepathic frequencies." Craig nodded, his eyes scanning the towering crystalline walls. Streams of light pulsed through the structure, creating mesmerizing patterns that shifted and flowed like living art. "Impressive work, Naya. They won't soon forget this." A tugging at his sleeve drew his attention downward. Aiden, his son, gazed up at him with eyes that sparkled like living gems. "Dad, can I greet the aliens too?" Craig knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Of course, but remember what we practiced. No sudden movements, and try not to project your thoughts too strongly." As they stepped out onto the landing pad, the Arborian sky erupted in a dazzling display. The Altaran ship descended, its organic hull shimmering with colors that defied description. Craig felt his heart race as the vessel touched down, its contours rippling as if alive. Craig stepped forward, Korvac at his side. He extended his hand, willing it not to tremble. "Welcome to Arborea," he said, his voice steady despite the thundering of his heart. "I am Craig Roberts, and this is my partner, Korvac." The envoy's luminous eyes widened as they took in the sight before them. Their gaze lingered on the assembled hybrid children, who stood in neat rows behind their parents. A ripple of telepathic communication passed through the Altaran group, their surprise and wonder palpable. "Greetings, Craig Roberts and Korvac of Arborea," the envoy spoke, their voice a harmonious blend of audible tones and mental resonance. "I am Xanthor, emissary of the Altaran Consortium. They paused, seemingly at a loss for words. We had not anticipated such a wondrous sight. Craig felt a surge of pride as Xanthor's gaze swept over the hybrid children once more. "Our children are the living embodiment of our mission," he said, gesturing to Aiden and the others. A bridge between species, forged in love and unity. Xanthor nodded, their eyes shimmering with an emotion Craig couldn't quite place. You have achieved something truly remarkable here. We are honored to bear witness to it. As they guided the Altaran delegation into the reception hall, Craig couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. The hours of preparation, the sleepless nights spent agonizing over every detail, it had all been worth it. For in the eyes of these advanced beings, he saw not just curiosity or diplomatic courtesy, but genuine awe and respect. The following days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Naya and her team demonstrated their sustainable energy systems, the crystalline structures humming with power drawn directly from Arboria's core. Lyra and the Nurturers showcased the hybrid children's remarkable abilities, their young minds easily grasping complex concepts that left even the Altarans impressed. On the final evening of the Altaran visit, Craig found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the settlement. The twin suns of Arboria were setting, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold. Xanthor approached, their robes rustling softly in the evening breeze. Your achievements here go beyond mere technological marvels, the envoy said, their voice tinged with reverence. You have created a true harmony between disparate species, between technology and nature. It is inspiring. Xanthor turned to face him, their luminous eyes intense. The Altaran Consortium will support your efforts. Your light must not be hidden. The galaxy needs the hope you represent. As the Altaran ship lifted off the next morning, its sleek form quickly becoming a speck in the azure sky, Craig felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over him. This was more than a diplomatic success. It was validation of everything they had worked for, everything they believed in. Korvac's hand slipped into his, her touch sending a pulse of energy through his body. Around them, the hybrid children watched the departing ship with wide eyes, their skin flickering with excitement and possibility. "We did it," Korvac whispered, her voice filled with quiet joy. Craig squeezed her hand, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "No," he said softly, "we've only just begun." The roar of the crowd faded as Craig stepped onto the Unity's boarding ramp. His footsteps echoed through the cavernous docking bay, each step bringing him closer to the unknown. The ship's bio-organic hull pulsed beneath his palm, warm and alive. Inside, the command center hummed with activity. Naya hunched over a console, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "Final systems check complete," she announced, her voice tight with concentration. "All power levels optimal." Craig nodded, settling into the captain's chair. The seat molded to his form, neural interface tendrils snaking out to connect with his nervous system. He inhaled sharply as the ship's consciousness merged with his own. "Korvac status report," he called out, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. His partner's luminous form materialized beside him. All crew accounted for. Life support systems green across all decks. Her eyes met his, a silent exchange of persistence passing between them. Through the view screen, Craig watched as the docking bay doors slowly parted. Arboria's twin suns bathed the launch pad in golden light, glinting off the Unity's sleek hull. "This is it," Craig breathed, his hands clutching the chairs. "Naya, initiate launch sequence." The ship's engines roared to life, a deep thrum that reverberated through every fiber of Craig's being. The Unity lifted off with surprising grace, rising steadily through Arboria's atmosphere. As they broke free of the planet's gravitational pull, Craig felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He turned to address the bridge crew, their faces a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. "We carry with us the hopes and dreams of our people," he said, his voice firm. "But more than that, we carry a message of unity, of understanding. Let's show the galaxy what we're made of." With a gesture, Craig brought up the star map. Countless pinpricks of light stretched out before them, each one a potential ally or threat. He selected their first destination, a nearby system known for its peaceful inhabitants. "Helm, set course for the Lyra cluster," he ordered. "Let's make history." The Unity's engines pulsed, propelling them into the vast unknown. As Arborea shrank to a distant speck behind them, Craig felt a surge of pride. This was more than a voyage of exploration. It was the first step towards a brighter future for all. The crystalline chamber pulsed with an otherworldly energy as Craig took a step toward the nearest portal. Its surface rippled like liquid mercury, reflecting distorted images of impossible realms beyond. He reached out, his fingers hovering mere inches from the shimmering gateway. "Wait," Korvac said, her luminous form gliding to his side. "We should approach this together." Craig nodded, feeling the comforting warmth of her presence. He turned to address the rest of their small group. Zara stood tall, her posture radiating a mix of scientific curiosity and caution. The other Benzite females clustered nearby, their bioluminescent skin flickering with nervous energy. "We've faced the unknown before," Craig said, his voice steady despite the gravity of their situation. "This is no different. We stick together, we watch each other's backs, and we tackle whatever challenges these Xanaveran throw at us." The disembodied voice of the interdimensional guardians rumbled through the chamber once more. "The first trial awaits. Step through the portal, travelers, and prove your worth." Craig took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. He reached out, clasping Korvac's hand in his own. With his free hand, he gestured for Zara and the others to gather close. "On three," he said, locking eyes with each member of his makeshift family. "1, 2, 3!" As one, they surged forward, plunging into the swirling vortex of the portal. The world around them twisted and warped, reality itself seeming to bend and fracture. Craig felt his body stretching, compressing, folding in on itself in ways that defied comprehension. He clung tightly to Korvac's hand, anchoring himself to her presence as they hurtled through the interdimensional void. With a violent lurch, they emerged on the other side. Craig stumbled, gasping for breath as his senses recalibrated. He blinked rapidly, taking in their new surroundings. They stood on a vast plain of shifting sand, stretching as far as the eye could see in every direction. 2 suns blazed overhead, one a searing white, and the other a deep, angry red. The heat was oppressive, seeming to sap the strength from Craig's limbs with each passing moment. "Is everyone all right?" he called out, scanning the group. Korvac nodded, her radiant form already adapting to the harsh environment. Zara and the other Benzites seemed to be faring better than Craig, their bioluminescent skin providing some natural protection against the punishing rays of the twin suns. Before anyone could respond further, the sand at their feet began to churn and roil. Massive, segmented forms burst from beneath the surface, towering over the group. Craig's eyes widened as he took in the sight of enormous, insectoid creatures, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming in the harsh sunlight. The largest of the creatures, easily 3 times Craig's height, clicked its mandibles together. To his shock it spoke, its voice a grating metallic rasp. "Welcome, off-worlders, to the crucible of endurance," it said. "I am Zixka, overseer of this realm. Your trial is simple. Cross the sea of shifting sands and reach the oasis of truth. But be warned, the journey will test the very limits of your physical and mental resilience." "We need to pool our strengths," he said. "Korvac, can you use your bioluminescence to help shield us from this heat? Zara, I need you to analyze the sand. See if there's any way we can use it to our advantage." As his companions nodded and set to work, Craig squared his shoulders, facing the vast expanse of scorching desert before them. The first trial of the gauntlet of ascension had begun, and failure was not an option. With unwavering purpose, he took his first step into the sea of shifting sands, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Craig's fingers flew across the holographic interface, adjusting parameters and recalibrating systems. The Unity's bioorganic hull pulsed beneath his feet, a subtle vibration that felt off-kilter in this alien dimension. "Oxygen mix stabilizing," he announced, eyes scanning the readouts. "But we're still seeing fluctuations in the quantum field. It's like the fabric of space-time itself is different here." Korvac placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch sending a familiar surge of energy through his body. "I can feel it too," she said softly. "The fundamental forces we're accustomed to, they don't quite align." Zara approached, her bioluminescent skin flickering with nervous energy. "I've completed a preliminary scan of our surroundings," she reported, pulling up a three-dimensional hologram. "The star patterns are completely unfamiliar. I can't match them to any known constellations in our database." The gravity of their situation settled over the bridge crew. Tense silence filled the air, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. "What are our options?" one of the Benzite crew members asked, voice tight with barely contained panic. Craig took a deep breath, forcing his mind to focus on practical solutions. "First, we need to ensure our long-term survival in this environment. Zara, work with the engineering team to modify our life support systems. We need to account for these dimensional variances." Zara nodded, already pulling up schematics on her console. "I'll start by reconfiguring the atmospheric processes. We may need to synthesize new compounds to maintain a breathable atmosphere." "Good," Craig said. "Korvac, I need you to reach out with your empathic abilities. See if you can sense any life forms or energy patterns in this dimension that might help us navigate." Korvac closed her eyes, her form shimmering as she extended her consciousness outward. After a tense moment, she shook her head. "It's strange. I can sense something, but it's unlike anything I've encountered before. It's as if the very essence of life is structured differently here." Craig nodded grimly. "Keep trying, any information could be crucial." He turned to address the rest of the crew. "Everyone else, I want a full systems check. Propulsion, weapons, shields, everything. We don't know what kind of threats we might face in this dimension, and we need to be prepared for anything." As the crew sprang into action, Craig allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. They had faced challenges before, but this was unprecedented. They were adrift in an alien reality, cut off from everything familiar. He gazed out the view screen at the swirling, chaotic starfield beyond. Somewhere out there was the key to getting them home, and no matter what it took, he would find it. "All right," he said, squaring his shoulders. "Let's get to work. We've got a dimensional crisis to solve." The Unity's engines thrummed as reality twisted around them. Craig's hands squeezed the armrests of his chair, fingers tightening with tension. The interdimensional jump tore through the fabric of space-time, hurling the ship and its crew into the unknown. Alarms blared throughout the bridge, as systems strained under the immense forces. Zara's fingers danced across her console, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with frantic energy. "Structural integrity at 60% and falling," she shouted over the cacophony. Craig's eyes darted between readouts, assessing their dire situation. "Korvac, divert auxiliary power to the integrity fields." Korvac nodded, her form shimmering as she interfaced directly with the ship's systems. "Done, but it won't hold for long. We need to exit the rift." The view screen showed only a swirling maelstrom of impossible colors and shapes. Craig felt his molecules threatening to tear apart, the very essence of his being stretched to its limits. He ground his teeth, fighting through the pain. "Naya, scan for any stable pocket of space-time," he ordered, voice strained. The Benzite navigator's hands flew across her controls. "There!" she cried, highlighting a region of relative calm amidst the chaos. "But it's closing fast." Craig didn't hesitate. "Full impulse power, take us in." The Unity surged forward, engines screaming in protest. The ship bucked and shuddered, threatening to shake itself apart. Craig's vision blurred, reality itself seeming to fracture around him. With a violent lurch, they burst through the collapsing rift. The kaleidoscopic nightmare of the interdimensional void gave way to the comforting blackness of normal space. Stars glittered in the distance, a welcome sight after their harrowing ordeal. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the labored breathing of the crew. Craig sagged in his chair, every muscle in his body aching from the strain. He looked around, taking stock of his people. Zara slumped over her console, antenna drooping with exhaustion. The other Benzites leaned against bulkheads or sat heavily in their chairs, their normally vibrant skin now pale and dim. Korvac's luminous form flickered weakly as she materialized beside Craig. "A status report," Craig said, his voice hoarse. Korvac's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of relief and concern. "We made it, Craig, but the ship took heavy damage. Multiple systems are offline, and we've lost a significant portion of our power reserves." Craig nodded grimly. He turned to address the bridge crew, his gaze sweeping over their weary faces. "We've faced our first true test out here, and we've survived, but this is just the beginning. The Zar-Guloth are out there, and who knows what other dangers lurk in the depths of space. We need to be ready." He stood, wincing at the protests of his battered body. "Zara, begin a full damage assessment. Naya, try to determine our position relative to known space. The rest of you, take a moment to catch your breath. Then we need all hands on repairs." As the crew set to work, Craig moved to the view screen, staring out at the unfamiliar stars. The encounter with the Zar-Guloth had shaken him more than he cared to admit. Their mission of peace and unity suddenly seemed naive in the face of such ruthless hostility. Craig's teeth gritted. "I'm thinking we need to be prepared for anything out here. Our message of unity is important, but so is our survival. We can't help anyone if we're dead." Korvac nodded, her luminous form pulsing in agreement. "Then we adapt, we learn, we grow stronger with each challenge." Craig turned to her, a small smile touching his lips despite the gravity of their situation. "Together," he said, reaching out to take her hand. As they stood there, gazing out at the vast unknown before them, Craig felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but with his crew, his family, by his side, he knew they could face anything the universe threw at them. The Unity shuddered as the tractor beam latched onto its hull. Craig's hands flew across the control panel, desperately trying to break free, but the Tarangar vessel's grip held firm. "Korvac status report," Craig called out, his voice tight with tension. Korvac's luminous form flickered as she interfaced with the ship's systems. "Our power reserves are critically low. The jump drained most of our remaining energy." Zara's fingers danced across her console, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with nervous energy. "Craig, I'm detecting multiple life signs aboard the Tarangar vessel. They're preparing to board us." Craig's mind raced, weighing their limited options. The crew looked to him, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "All right, listen up," he said, his voice carrying across the bridge. "We're in no shape for a fight. Our best chance is to try and communicate to make them understand we're not a threat." Korvac nodded, her eyes meeting Craig's. "I'll do what I can to boost our universal translator. Maybe we can find some common ground." A harsh clang echoed through the ship as the Tarangar vessel's docking tube connected with their airlock. Craig stood, squaring his shoulders. "Zara, Korvac, you're with me," he said. "The rest of you stay at your stations. Be ready for anything." They made their way to the airlock, the ship's corridors eerily quiet save for the hum of failing systems. As they reached the sealed door, Craig turned to his companions. "Remember, we're diplomats first," he said softly. "No matter what happens, we stick to our principles." The airlock hissed open, revealing a group of imposing figures. The Tarangar boarding party stood nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in iridescent scales. Multiple eyes blinked in unison as they took in the Unity's crew. One of the Tarangar stepped forward, a device on its chest pulsing with energy. When it spoke, the words came out as a series of clicks and whistles, quickly translated by the Unity's systems. "You have breached the sovereign territory of the Tarangar Dominion," the alien said, its tone harsh. "Explain yourselves immediately." Craig raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I am Craig, captain of the Unity. We are peaceful explorers from a distant sector of space. Our arrival in your territory was unintentional, the result of fleeing a greater threat." The Tarangar's eyes narrowed, focusing intently on Craig. "What threat could drive you to such reckless action?" "We encountered beings called the Ascendant," Korvac interjected, her luminous form causing the Tarangar to take a step back. "They threatened to consume our very reality." A ripple of agitation passed through the boarding party. The lead Tarangar's scales shifted color, a deep blue spreading across its body. "The cosmic devourers," it hissed. "You have brought their attention to our realm." Craig shook his head emphatically. "No, we escaped through a spatial rift. We had no idea where we would emerge." "Your vessel is damaged," it stated. "You will be brought aboard our ship for further questioning. Any resistance will be met with force." Craig nodded, knowing they had little choice. As the Tarangar began to escort them from the Unity, he caught Zara's eye. The Benzite's expression was one of quiet willpower, a silent promise that they would face this new challenge together. The airlock sealed behind them with a final ominous hiss. Craig, Korvac, and Zara found themselves being led into the unknown depths of the Tarangar vessel, their fate hanging in the balance. "Move!" he hissed urgently, ushering Korvac and Zara forward. Their footsteps rang out against the deck plating as they sprinted down the corridor, adrenaline surging through their veins. Zara's voice came out in breathless bursts as they ran. "We need to find an escape pod or shuttle bay." Craig nodded, his eyes darting left and right, searching for any sign of a way off the ship. The corridors all looked maddeningly similar, stark, utilitarian, devoid of any helpful signage. Suddenly, heavy footfalls sounded from an adjoining passageway. Craig pulled his companions into a shadowy alcove, pressing themselves against the wall as a squad of Tarangar guards thundered past, their scaled faces set in fierce dedication. As the sound of the guards faded, Korvac closed her eyes, her luminous form pulsing softly. "I sense—" "This way," she whispered, pointing down a side corridor. "There's an area of the ship with a different energy signature. It could be a hangar." They set off in the direction Korvac indicated, moving as swiftly and silently as possible. The ship's alarms continued to blare, but the corridors remained eerily empty, the Tarangar clearly focusing their search elsewhere. After what felt like an eternity of tense, furtive movement, they rounded a corner and found themselves facing a massive set of doors. A control panel glowed faintly beside them, covered in alien script. Zara stepped forward, her fingers flying over the panel. "The encryption is complex, but I think I can—" Her words were cut short as the doors suddenly hissed open. Craig tensed, ready for a fight, but instead of Tarangar guards they were greeted by the sight of a cavernous hangar bay. A sleek, predatory-looking shuttle sat on the launch pad, its engines idling. "That's our ticket out of here," Craig said, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "Let's move before—" A plasma bolt sizzled past his ear, scorching the wall behind him. Craig spun to see a group of Tarangar guards pouring into the corridor, weapons raised. "Gus," he shouted, pushing Korvac and Zara towards the shuttle. "I'll hold them off." Craig snatched up a piece of debris from the floor, hurling it at the approaching guards with all his strength. It struck the lead Tarangar in the face, sending him stumbling back into his comrades. Korvac's voice rang out from the shuttle's entrance. "Craig, hurry!" He turned and sprinted for the ship, plasma bolts sizzling through the air around him. His lungs burned as he pushed himself to the limit, diving through the shuttle's hatch just as it began to close. Zara was already at the controls, her fingers dancing across the unfamiliar interface. The shuttle lurched as it lifted off, the hangar bay doors creaking open to reveal the inky blackness of space. As they shot out of the Tarangar vessel, Craig caught a glimpse of a massive volcanic world looming before them. Crucible Prime. Whatever trials awaited them there, they had bought themselves a chance to face them on their own terms. The shuttle accelerated away from the Tarangar warship, plunging them into the unknown depths of space. Craig allowed himself a moment to catch his breath, knowing that their ordeal was just the beginning. The crucible of Tarangar still lay ahead, its mysteries and dangers yet to be revealed. The Unity's engines roared as Craig pushed them to their limits, leaving the smouldering wreckage of the Tarangar warship behind. Alarms blared throughout the ship, warning of multiple system failures and power fluctuations. Craig's hands flew across the control panel, his face etched with concentration. "Zara, what's our status?" Zara's bioluminescent skin pulsed rapidly as she assessed the damage. Critical, Craig. We've lost primary power to decks 3 through 7. Life support is functioning on emergency backup only. Korvac materialized beside Craig, her luminous form flickering. The energy discharge drained our reserves. We're running on fumes. A violent shudder rocked the ship, throwing Craig against the helm controls. He gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain their course. "And we need to find somewhere to set down and make repairs," he said, scanning the star field before them. "Any habitable systems nearby?" Zara's fingers danced across her console. "There's a Class M planet about half a light-year from our current position, but Craig, in our current state, I'm not sure we'll make it." Craig locked eyes with Korvac, seeing his own grit reflected in her gaze. "We have to try, it's our only shot." He turned to address the rest of the crew, their exhausted faces looking to him for guidance. "Listen up, I need every ounce of power we can spare diverted to the engines and life support. Shut down everything else if you have to. We're going to limp our way to safety, understood?" A chorus of affirmatives rang out as the crew sprang into action. Craig felt a swell of pride at their unwavering drive. The Unity lurched forward, its hull creaking under the strain. Craig's muscles tensed as he wrestled with the controls, willing the ship to hold together for just a little longer. Minutes stretched into hours as they limped through space, each moment a battle against the encroaching void. Warning lights flashed across every console, but Craig refused to give up. Finally, a small blue-green orb appeared on the display. Zara's voice rang out, tinged with relief. "Craig, we're approaching the planet's atmosphere." The Unity shuddered violently as it plunged into the planet's upper atmosphere, friction heating the hull to a dull red glow. Craig fought to maintain their trajectory, the ship bucking and rolling beneath his hands. With a bone-jarring impact, the Unity crashed onto the planet's surface, carving a deep furrow through alien soil before finally coming to rest. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal and the labored breathing of the crew. Craig raised his head, taking in the sight of his battered but unbroken family. "Status report," he called out, his voice hoarse. One by one the crew responded, confirming that they were alive and mostly unharmed. Craig allowed himself a small smile of relief. "All right, people," he said, pushing himself to his feet. "We made it this far together and we'll face whatever comes next the same way. Let's get to work on those repairs." As the crew of the Unity began to assess the damage and explore their alien surroundings, Craig knew that their trials were not nearly finished. But with each challenge they overcame, their bond grew stronger, forging them into an unbreakable force of unity that would shape the very stars themselves. The Unity glided through the uncharted expanse of space, its organic hull pulsing with newfound energy. Craig stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the starfield ahead. The ship's enhanced sensors probed the cosmic depths, gathering data at an unprecedented rate. Zara's voice cut through the quiet hum of the bridge. "Craig, I'm picking up an unusual reading." Her fingers danced across the control panel, bringing up a detailed sensor sweep on the main view screen. "It's the energy signature we detected earlier, but different." Craig leaned forward, studying the swirling patterns of light and energy. "Different how?" Craig nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "Helm, adjust course to intercept that energy signature. Let's see what other secrets this cosmic crucible has to offer." The Unity banked gracefully, its enhanced drive systems propelling it smoothly towards the source of the mysterious energy. As they drew closer, the view screen filled with a breathtaking sight. A massive, swirling nebula of blues and purples shot through with veins of golden light. "My God," Craig whispered, his voice filled with awe. "It's beautiful." Zara's voice was tight with excitement. "Craig, I'm detecting multiple spatial anomalies within the nebula. They appear to be gateways of some kind." "Gateways?" Craig turned to her, his eyes sharp with interest. "To where?" "I'm not sure," Zara admitted. "The readings are off the charts. These portals could lead anywhere, or anywhen." Korvac stepped forward, her radiant form pulsing with anticipation. "The Forge has gifted us with more than just enhanced systems," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's opened doorways to realms beyond our wildest imaginations." Craig's hand hovered over the controls, his mind racing with possibilities. The Unity, newly forged and empowered, stood poised on the brink of a cosmic crossroads. What wonders, or dangers, awaited them beyond those shimmering gateways? The Unity surged forward, its sleek form slipping effortlessly into the swirling mists of the nebula. As they approached the first of the mysterious portals, Craig felt a thrill of excitement course through him. Whatever lay beyond, he knew that he and his crew, this family forged in the fires of adversity, would face it together. The Unity lurched violently as another wave of interdimensional energy crashed against its hull. Craig's hands flew across the control panel, his face locked in intense concentration as he fought to keep the ship steady. Zara's fingers danced across her console, her bioluminescent skin pulsing rapidly. "Shields are down to 30%, Craig. We can't take much more of this." The main view screen flickered and distorted, showing the horrifying sight of the Zathrak entities pouring through the rift. Their amorphous bodies writhed and twisted, defying all known laws of physics as they advanced towards the Unity. Korvac's voice cut through the chaos, tinged with a mix of awe and terror. "Craig, look at them. They're reshaping reality itself as they move." Craig watched in stunned fascination as space itself seemed to warp and bend around the Zathrak, stars and nebulae twisting into impossible new configurations in their wake. A deafening psychic shriek assaulted their minds, causing the entire crew to wince in pain. The disembodied voice of the Zathrak boomed once more, its words dripping with malevolent intent. "Your resistance is futile, mortals. Embrace the cosmic convergence and be reborn in our unified reality." Craig gritted his teeth, pushing through the mental onslaught. "Like hell we will," he growled, his eyes blazing with dedication. He spun towards Zara, his mind racing. "Lock onto those coordinates. We're going to hit that rift with everything we've got." Zara's eyes widened in shock. "Craig, if we discharge that much energy, it could tear the Unity apart." "We don't have a choice," Craig replied, his voice grim but resolute. "If we don't stop them here, there won't be a universe left to save." With a nod of understanding, Zara's fingers flew across her console, preparing for the daring plan. Craig turned to Korvac, his expression softening for a moment. "I need you to channel every ounce of power we have into the deflector array. Can you do it?" Korvac's luminous form pulsed with tenacity. "I'll give it everything I have, my love." As Korvac moved to the engineering station, Craig addressed the rest of the crew. "Listen up, everyone. What we're about to do, it's dangerous. But I believe in each and every one of you. We're going to save reality itself, and we're going to do it together." A chorus of affirmatives rang out across the bridge, the crew's perseverance hardening in the face of cosmic annihilation. Craig took a deep breath, his hand hovering over the discharge controls. "All right, on my mark. 3, 2, 1, it's in now." He slammed his palm down, and the Unity unleashed a torrent of pure, focused energy directly at the heart of the interdimensional rift. The ship shuddered and groaned, the very fabric of its being strained to the breaking point as it channeled more power than it was ever designed to handle. The beam of energy lanced through space, colliding with the swirling vortex of the rift. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with an ear-splitting shriek that transcended normal sound, the rift began to collapse in on itself. The Zathrak entities writhed and contorted, their otherworldly forms being pulled back into the collapsing portal. Their psychic screams of rage and desperation assaulted the minds of the Unity's crew, but Craig and his companions stood firm, pouring every ounce of their will into the desperate plan. With a final reality-shaking implosion, the rift sealed itself shut, taking the Zathrak armada with it. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the labored breathing of the exhausted crew. Craig sagged in his chair, his body trembling from the intensity of the ordeal. He looked around at his companions, seeing the same mix of exhaustion and disbelief on their faces. We did it," Zara whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. Korvac materialized next to Craig, her radiant form flickering with fatigue. You saved us all, my love. You saved reality itself. Craig shook his head, a tired smile crossing his face. No, Korvac, we all did this together. That's what makes us strong. That's what the Zathrak could never understand. As the adrenaline of the moment began to fade, Craig knew that their victory had come at a cost. The Unity was battered, its systems strained to the breaking point. But as he looked at the determined faces of his crew, his family, he knew that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in purpose and spirit. The stars outside the viewscreen seemed to shine a little brighter as the Unity limped away from the site of their greatest triumph, a beacon of hope and unity in a vast and often dangerous cosmos. The Unity shuddered violently as it approached the swirling vortex of the umbral nexus. Craig gripped the helm controls, his fingers tightening with tension. The ship's hull creaked and groaned under the strain of the anomaly's gravitational pull. Zara, status report, Craig called out, his voice sharp with urgency. Zara's fingers flew across her console, her bioluminescent skin pulsing rapidly. Shields are holding at 60%, but the Nexus's energy is interfering with our sensors. I can't get a clear reading on what's ahead. The main viewscreen flickered and distorted, showing glimpses of impossible geometries and colors that shouldn't exist. Craig fought to keep his focus as the sight threatened to overwhelm his senses. Suddenly, the disembodied voice of the Umbral Guardian filled their minds once more. Your trial begins now, mortals. Face the infinite and prove your worth. The deck beneath their feet began to twist and warp, reality itself bending to the will of the Guardian. Craig stumbled, catching himself on the edge of his chair. He watched in horror as parts of the bridge seemed to phase in and out of existence. Korvac nodded, her radiant form pulsing with effort. She spread her arms wide, channeling the living energy of Arborea. A bubble of stable reality formed around the bridge crew, pushing back against the chaos of the Nexus. I can't hold it for long, Korvac said, her voice strained. The power of this place, it's beyond anything I've ever encountered. Craig turned to address his crew, his eyes blazing with unwavering commitment. Listen up. We're going to face challenges unlike anything we've seen before. But remember who we are and why we're here. We're not just explorers or diplomats. We're a family, and together there's nothing we can't overcome. A chorus of affirmatives rang out across the bridge, the crew's loyalty hardening in the face of cosmic chaos. The ship lurched forward, pulled deeper into the heart of the Nexus. Outside their protective bubble, reality fractured and reassembled itself in bewildering patterns. Ghostly echoes of alternate timelines flickered in and out of existence, showing glimpses of paths not taken and choices unmade. Craig's mind reeled as he saw phantom versions of himself and his crew, some triumphant, others broken and defeated. He shook his head, forcing himself to focus on the here and now. Zara, he called out, can you locate the source of the Guardian's power? If we can find it, maybe we can communicate directly. Zara's eyes narrowed as she scanned her readouts. I'm detecting a massive concentration of energy at the heart of the vortex. It could be what we're looking for, but reaching it won't be easy. Craig nodded, his eyebrows furrowed with purpose. Plot a course, we're going in. The Unity plunged deeper into the swirling chaos of the umbral nexus, its organic hull straining against forces it was never designed to withstand. Craig guided the ship with every ounce of skill he possessed, weaving through streams of raw, unfiltered reality. Korvac's protective field flickered and wavered, her luminous form dimming with the effort of maintaining their pocket of stability. "Craig," she gasped, I can't hold it much longer." "Just a little further," Craig urged, his eyes locked on the roiling heart of the vortex. "We're almost there." As they approached the core of the nexus, a massive, shifting form began to take shape before them. The umbral guardian coalesced into a being of pure energy, its form constantly changing and reshaping itself. "You have breached the threshold, mortals," the guardian's voice boomed in their minds. "Now face the ultimate test of your grit." Tendrils of pure chaos lashed out, enveloping the Unity. Craig felt reality itself begin to unravel around them, threatening to tear them apart at the atomic level. "Hold on," he shouted to his crew. "Whatever happens, whatever you see or feel, remember who you are, remember what binds us together." As the chaos of the umbral nexus threatened to overwhelm them, Craig reached out, grasping Korvac's hand. Around the bridge, the rest of the crew did the same, forming an unbroken circle of unity in the face of cosmic madness. The Guardian's voice echoed once more, tinged with something that might have been curiosity. "Interesting. You face oblivion not as individuals, but as one. Perhaps there is more to you than I first perceived." Craig lifted his head, meeting the Guardian's shifting gaze with unflinching courage. "We are the Arborians," he declared, his voice steady and clear. "We stand together, united in purpose and spirit, and we're ready to face whatever trial you have in store." The Umbral Guardian seemed to consider his words, its form shimmering with untold power. As the crew of the Unity stood firm, bound by their unshakable bond, they prepared to face the next phase of their cosmic trial. The Unity glided through the shimmering expanse of the temporal nexus, its organic hull pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Craig's hands danced across the control panel, making minute adjustments to keep the ship steady amidst the swirling currents of chronospatial energy. "Zara, what are you seeing?" Craig asked, his eyes fixed on the kaleidoscopic vista before them. Zara's fingers flew across her console, her bioluminescent skin flickering rapidly as she processed the incoming data. "It's incredible, Craig. We're detecting temporal signatures from countless realities, all converging on this single point in space-time." The main view screen flickered and shifted, displaying a dizzying array of images from various timelines. In one, they saw a version of Earth where dinosaurs still roamed. In another, a galactic empire of sentient machines stretched across the cosmos. Korvac's radiant form pulsed with excitement and trepidation. "We must be cautious. The slightest disruption to the temporal fabric here could have catastrophic consequences across multiple realities." As if in response to her words, a violent tremor shook the Unity. Alarms blared across the bridge as the ship's systems struggled to compensate for the sudden temporal distortion. "Craig," Zara called out, her voice tight with urgency, "I'm detecting a massive surge of chronoparticles directly ahead. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." The view screen flickered once more, revealing a colossal pulsating vortex of pure temporal energy. Tendrils of chronospatial force lashed out, caressing the Unity's hull and causing reality itself to warp and twist around them. Craig's fists tight as he fought to maintain control of the ship. "All hands brace for impact, we're going in." With a thunderous roar, the Unity plunged into the heart of the temporal vortex. The laws of physics seemed to break down around them as past, present, and future collided in a maelstrom of pure, unfettered energy. Craig's mind reeled as he experienced multiple timelines simultaneously. He saw himself as a child on Earth, as an old man on a distant colony world, and as a being of pure energy in a far-flung future. Yet through it all, he clung to his sense of self, to the unbreakable bond he shared with his crew. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice echoing strangely across the temporal planes. "Focus on who you are, on what binds us together." As the Unity hurtled through the vortex, fragments of other realities began to bleed through. Ghostly figures flickered in and out of existence on the bridge, alternate versions of themselves, paths not taken, and choices unmade. Korvac's luminous form expanded, enveloping the bridge in a protective cocoon of stabilizing energy. "I'm trying to anchor us to our own timeline," she gasped, her voice strained with effort. "But the forces at work here, they're beyond anything I've ever encountered." Zara's fingers flew across her console, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. "Craig, I'm detecting a stable point ahead. It might be our way out of this madness." Craig nodded, his hands firm on the controls, as he guided the Unity towards the eye of the temporal storm. "Steady as she goes," he murmured, his voice calm, despite the chaos that raged around them. We're going to make it through this. Together. As they approached the stable point, the maelstrom of temporal energy began to subside. The ghostly echoes of alternate realities faded away, leaving only the familiar faces of Craig's crew. With a final reality-shaking lurch, the Unity burst free of the chronovortex, emerging into a vast, shimmering expanse of tranquil space. Before them loomed the crystalline spires of the temporal nexus, a city that existed outside of conventional time and space. Craig sagged in his chair, his body trembling from the intensity of their ordeal. He looked around at his companions, seeing the same mix of exhaustion and awe on their faces. Korvac materialized beside Craig, her radiant form flickering with fatigue. "But to where or when?" she asked, her luminous eyes fixed on the impossible city that stretched out before them. Craig straightened in his chair, his expression set with purpose. "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever challenges this place holds, we'll face them the way we always have, together." As the Unity drifted closer to the shimmering metropolis, Craig knew that their journey through the heart of causality itself had only just begun. Whatever lay ahead in this nexus of all possible realities, he and his crew would confront it head-on, their bond unbreakable, their spirit unshakable. The Unity's organic hull quivered as it crossed the threshold into the temporal nexus. Craig's hands gripped the control panel, his squeezing hard with tension. The viewscreen flickered and warped, reality itself bending around them. "Zara, status report," Craig called out, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Zara's fingers danced across her console, her bioluminescent skin pulsing rapidly. "Quantum shielding holding at 87%, Captain, but these temporal fluctuations are unlike anything I've ever seen." Korvac stood beside Craig, her radiant form casting a soft glow over the bridge. She closed her eyes, channeling the symbiotic energies of Arborea. A shimmering aura enveloped the Unity, reinforcing their temporal cohesion. Suddenly a thunderous voice reverberated through the ship, causing the very air to vibrate. "Mortals, you trespass upon the domain of the Tempest Collective." Before them, a colossal figure materialized, its form constantly shifting and reforming. Tendrils of chronokinetic energy lashed out, caressing the Unity's hull. The ship groaned under the strain. Craig stepped forward, his eyes locked on the entity. "We are the Arborians. We come seeking understanding, not conquest." The entity's form twisted, a facsimile of a face emerging from the swirling energy. "Foolish creatures. You cannot comprehend the forces at work here." As if to emphasize its point, reality fractured around them. Temporal rifts tore open, each one a window into a different timeline. Craig's breath caught in his throat as he witnessed visions of triumph and tragedy. In one rift, he saw the Arborian society spanning countless galaxies. In another, the Zarthrak stood victorious over a ruined cosmos. His heart clenched as he beheld a timeline where Korvac and the other Benzites had perished, leaving him alone in the vastness of space. But it was the final vision that shook him to his core, a reality where he had never existed, where the Benzites' dreams of unity had withered and died. "Craig?" Korvac's voice pulled him back to the present. Her luminous eyes searched his face, concern etched in her features. He swallowed hard, forcing the words past the lump in his throat. "I saw a world without us, without our dream." Korvac's form pulsed with purpose. "Then we must ensure that future never comes to pass. Our bond is stronger than any temporal flux." The entity's voice boomed once more, tinged with what might have been respect. "Perhaps you possess more resilience than I first believed. You may proceed, but be warned. The choices you make here will echo across all realities." The ground beneath their feet began to shift and warp. Shimmering portals materialized around the Unity, each one a gateway to a different timeline. Craig's mind raced, weighing their options. He knew that every decision they made here could have far-reaching consequences. The fate of not just their reality, but countless others, hung in the balance. He turned to his crew, his expression one of unwavering determination. Whatever lies ahead, we face it together, for the sake of our dream, for the future of unity we've fought so hard to create. As they approached the first portal, Craig felt the weight of infinite possibilities pressing down upon him, but he also felt the strength of the bonds that tied him to his companions, bonds that transcended time and space itself. With a deep breath, he gave the order. "Take us in, Zara. Our journey through the heart of causality begins now." The Unity surged forward, plunging into the unknown depths of the temporal nexus. Whatever challenges awaited them, Craig knew they would face them head-on, united in purpose and spirit. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.